Now we will get started with this amazing panel, and we'll let them introduce themselves to you.
I'm Jared Fitch, and I am really stoked to be able to host this design debate today. As I call it, the fully responsive Thunderdome. So we hope we'll kind of get right into it. I'll let Daniel and Mia and Amélie and Mike introduce themselves, but I don't think it can be overstated how rad it is to have these four here. They have deep... They have deep and broad experience, really battle-hardened experience in all areas of design, all sizes of organizations, startups, things at scale, and I think we'll learn a lot today. I'm pretty sure that Andy and Wade and Ben asked me to do this because Mike and I use the same Just for Men.
It's not working very well.
It's clear, right?
It's clear, yeah. Right.
Arctic Fox.
Right.
What?
Why don't you take a minute and I'll just pass. Oh, you guys have mics.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And introduce yourselves. Just take a minute and talk about maybe the things that you're working on now. What keeps you up at night? What gets you up in the morning? That sort of thing.
Cool. I'm Mike. I'm working on nothing.
Woo!
Yeah.
Thank you. 15 months into a vacation. I most recently ran the design department at Twitter for 3 years in San Francisco. So just moved back up to Seattle and taking a bunch of time off and cooking and traveling and reading is what I'm doing.
Cool.
Amélie.
My name is Amélie. I'm the product design lead at the New York Times on the customer product team. What keeps me up at night? Nothing? What else am I supposed to say?
What gets you up in the morning?
What gets me up in the morning? I'm breathing. What else? Is that it?
Good start.
Okay. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Mia Blume. I previously led design teams at IDEO, Square, and Pinterest. After a couple startups, I took a little time off. And now I am a full-time design leadership coach. So I work primarily with startups and design leaders to help them figure out how to build great products and great teams.
I'm Daniel Burka, and I'm a design partner at Google's venture capital arm, GV. And I spent about 10 years working in the Bay Area with a variety of startups, including the last one that was funded by GV. And now I get to work on the other side of venture capital. And so I spend most of my time working with the portfolio companies we've invested in on their design challenges. What gets me up in the morning is solving big, hard, long-term problems. And I get to work on a bunch of life sciences projects, so a company trying to cure cancer, a company working on, like a wearable for people with essential tremors, their hands shake from neurological disease. Working on these kinds of problems, I think design can have huge impact, and it's really fun to think about how design can really actually be effective in organizations where it's not so obvious.
Yeah, thank you. So we hope to spend the next 30 minutes or so kind of getting into the nitty-gritty of maybe what design is, what designers do, how we can improve the world around us, how we can think more about the things that we're involved in. The first question that I think is on everybody's mind is on a debate like this is, will you release your tax returns?
Never.
I'm not making any money anymore, so I got nothing to release.
So this is a pretty hot topic today. How can we better define what design is?
How can we better define what design is? To me, when I try to explain what design is, it's very context-specific, right? Like, I think anytime you try to come up with a single sentence that sums up what we all do, what you all do, if you get too general, it kind of sounds trite. Like, you can say, design is about helping people get through life, right? Like, that's what we do. Like, when everybody who's designing a product in here, you're helping the user on the other end get through life. Whether it's, you work at the Times, you're helping them stay informed about what's going on in the world. You're building a fitness tracking device. You're helping them stay healthy. You're helping them get through life. But that doesn't really help us to explain it that way doesn't really help us in our workplace. And when somebody asks, what is the function of design or a designer in the workplace, I always explain it by saying, design's role is to lead the creative process of solving user problems, not to solve all the user problems on their own, but to lead the creative process that solves them. I think Dio's talk was great. He had that great double diamond slide that, that's about as much framework as I need to help explain what design does within an organization.
Amélie, what do you think?
I think we can more easily define it based on the problems that we're willing to solve. And we inherently limit ourselves by the problems we are willing to tackle as designers. I think we often talk about solving problems at the pixel level or the flow level or maybe even the app level, but I think we can do a lot more. And if we start to talk about, I'll talk about this more tomorrow, but organizational design or big, meaty social challenges, we can tackle those. We have the skills, we have the ability, and we could talk about design in that context. I don't think we do it enough, but we could.
Any other thoughts?
These are such wide arguments to have. I kind of feel embarrassed sometimes that I'm a senior designer who's been around for a while, and I don't know, especially like answering this question. I think it's mostly done to limit ourselves in terms of what we do get involved in. It's oh, designers do X, so we should ask them to do X. I think designers, like you were saying, limit themselves about what they'll work on. If you're working on a pricing page on on your app, to design it and use what we typically think of as design skills to improve that, you're really limited by what decision someone else made further upstream about what the pricing is in your app. So good design to me is going and working with your CFO and your CEO on repricing your fucking product. Sorry. I promise I wouldn't swear. I apologize to anybody. I will try to not do that. I'm passionate.
Start again at CFO.
Yeah. I think if you think really broadly, deep product design is very close to business. And going and working with business leaders on business challenges is design. Mm-hmm. I don't think that there's any contradiction in that. So, we get bogged down in what is UX design, and we draw lots of Venn diagrams of skills, and we talk about what an interaction designer does, and we draw more Venn diagrams. It's just get the job done. I don't know how else to say it.
I think it's great. I think people will be looking at the four of you as some with very broad and deep experience, but also how do they then implement some of these things that we're going to talk about into their work, even into their person, into their life. And so some of these things become labels as crutches, where we're looking for that answer. We're looking for that box of one that we can say this is who we are, and two, that we can defend it. And I think what Daniel was saying, and maybe there could be some counterpoints to this.
Why are we so interested in defending it? Why are designers so insecure that we feel like we have to, kind of define our role and then make it so clear that, we end up talking about design to everyone else in our organizations and try to teach them this is what a designer does, instead of really stopping and going and listening to everybody else about what they do and then going off and trying to help them.
I think there's something that's really unique about being, I think there's something really unique about being a designer in that there's this expectation about how we're supposed to approach the problems that we're solving. But at the end of the day, we're still human, and so we're fallible, and we're still affected by a lot of the things that humans are affected by. So in your case, you're asking, why is it that we're so determined to be defined by this label? I wouldn't say that's necessarily designers. I would say that's all humans in general. But the issue is that as designers, we should know better than to do that, but we don't know how to get out of that. So there's this constant contradiction within ourselves to kind of fight between, this label is what defines me as a human being and as a person, but also it also defines the work that I do, and I should be thinking outside of the box in order to solve these problems.
What exactly do you mean when you say that designers should know better?
I think that designers, I feel like if you're designing and solving problems for others, there should be this ability to let go of ego, and it's something that designers don't really have the capacity to do. I think that oftentimes designers even get to a point, whether you're solving big social problems or even just solving problems at the pixel level, we get to a point where we conflate art and design, and we go, well, this is my baby, this is who I am, this project that I've created, that I've worked on, defines me and is, in essence, me, but that's not necessarily the case. Anything that you do as a designer is not for you, it is for someone else. And for you to put yourself in a situation where your ego takes over, such as that you conflate design with art, it becomes a very big problem. And you become, I would say, I guess the word would be, you become conflicted as a designer because you're not quite sure of your purpose anymore, even if you're not aware of what your purpose is or is not.
Yeah, I violently agree with you.
I think what you mentioned about art and design is part of the reason why we need to use your word, defend ourselves as designers, because there are so many misconceptions about the word designer based on what people's previous experience with designers may have been. You walk up to a random person on the street and you just tell them, I'm a designer. You're just as likely to hear,
oh fashion?
Fashion, yeah. Oh, you make clothes. Like, what clothes do you make? Oh, you're an artist. Like, nobody will guess digital product design as the first thing that you do. And so you don't necessarily have to worry about that random person on the street, but guess what? You also have engineers and PMs and marketers and executives inside your own company who don't know what a designer is supposed to do. And so it's important. It's not like a power grab. It's not like I want to make sure design sits at the top of the pyramid in the company. It's not that. It's that I don't want design to be looked at as the art department, you know? And like, you guys have all hired designers. Like, I don't think I've ever hired an artist. Like, I actually hire away from that. Like, if you're telling me you want a design job in my department and you present yourself as an artist, I am not inclined to bring you on the team, because to your point, to me, those are two different things. And if you can't decide which you are, you probably are not going to succeed in a workplace full of conflict.
But I think a lot of that is because we illustrate what we do with aesthetics, right? And we show these tangible things, which is an important part of what we do. But why can't we just say, hey, we're really great problem solvers, and we happen to have a tool set of things that tend to bias towards the visual side. But we're problem solvers. Our engineers are problem solvers. Our PMs are problem solvers. And we're all trying to tackle these really tough challenges. We just bring a different skill set to the table.
Yeah.
We talk about the skill set so much that we lose the heart of what we're actually trying to do.
I would take that a step further. I think we talk so much.
Says
I just think
the guy on the
designers.
stage.
Yeah, sure. But I think I see too many people, and I tried to do this when I was younger. You know, when I worked at Dig, I ran a workshop of like trying to teach everybody in my organization like how designers think and what designers do. It's a very ineffective way of actually bringing people along. Like, you're much better at actually doing problem solving with people and leading by example.
For sure. I think prototyping is the skill that kind of like brings it together the best, because prototyping is a skill that designers can do, engineers can do, PMs can do, and it's the goal of it is to show what we could build if we get our stuff together, you know? And it's sort of like, to me, it's the great uniting force among the kind of like Venn diagram that Daniel was talking about, is like, can we all just get together and solve a problem in a prototype, research test to see if it's working, and then build it and launch it.
But I think to that point, I agree that prototyping is really good for demonstrating what designers do. I think the reason why a lot of designers, beyond the sense of ego of wanting to conflate who they are with this title, is that, to your point, like, for example, like I'm a first-generation Jamaican American. I couldn't just go to my Jamaican mom and just be like, oh, I'm a designer. She would absolutely have no idea as to what that is. And I think that's something that a lot of designers face, like in this room or anywhere else, where you don't really, there's no way to quite even show, like, yes, we do skew more towards aesthetics in terms of our tool set, but there's still no way to quite explain what it is that we do. Even if I were to show my mother what I do, it would still not have any impact. She wouldn't understand. So not to say that, you know, like, we should just focus on what we're doing. We should, but I will say that there is this desire. If someone says, I'm an engineer, people get it. If someone says, I'm a mathematician, people get it. But if I say I'm a designer, it's like, bung, 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 bung. People are like, what are these different options that you could possibly be? So I think that's kind of where the delineation wants to come from.
So you see it as, and this is interesting, I've never thought of it this way. Like, part of the desire is just as a human to feel understood?
I'm pretty sure that's a big part of it.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I was talking about in relationship to probably a new or an unsure designer, be it a digital product designer or an experience designer or whatever, you know, visual designer, UI, UX, whatever labels we want to give them. They have this need to sort of understand themselves and then get better and better at that thing. In your experience in leading teams at scale or hiring, firing, whatever, talk through some of these things around helping. And maybe at scale it's harder because you're not hiring unsure designers. But maybe you've come across somebody who at this moment is really struggling. And there's a battle out there right now. I came up, and a lot of people came up in a time before social media, before kind of easy access to online tools and YouTube University. You know, you get degrees all day long in anything you want. And we kind of had to fight our way through in order to get the experience necessary to do the job well. But now it seems like there's kind of a dichotomy of security, insecurity, and I know a lot, but I can't do a lot. And when it comes to practice, how would you kind of help a new or unsure designer in that way?
I think it's hard because it's not just a generation of designers that are coming up now that feel insecure versus being secure. I think it's the industry as a whole. The industry itself is very fledgling. And the industry itself hasn't quite defined what it is that we want to do or what we're trying to do. And so just the fact that I can say that I'm a product designer and I can go to someone else who's not necessarily the type of product designer that I am, whatever that means, and they go, oh, so you design furniture? And I'm like, not quite. So the fact that I have to add digital product designer in front of it, that in itself is really fascinating. I think there are lots of different terms, like to Daniel's point, like visual designer, UI designer, whatever type of designer label you want. They're coming up because the industry itself isn't defined. It's still very new. Like even before social media, even before the rise of the internet, like what is it that we're really doing as designers? Like yes, we're problem solving, but every other industry seems to have a niche where you can like break down. So like if I'm an engineer, I can break down into mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, et cetera. Like we don't quite have that because even as we try to define, a visual designer, say at the New York Times, might be very different from a visual designer at Pinterest. Like it's two completely different things. So I feel like in order to even answer that or even to guide that person, it's beyond even that person. It gets to the industry level, and for that person in particular, you'd have to focus on what that company's objectives are around design.
Sure, we're emerging, the path is ambiguous, it's gonna evolve, but I kind of just want us to get over the ambiguity, right? Like, we love designing really hard, tough problems that are ambiguous, and we're like, yeah, we're gonna get in there and we're gonna kill this, but somehow we're uncomfortable with the own ambiguity in our lives. And I kind of just want to say whatever you need to say to that person that you're talking to that will enable you to have a great conversation with them, right? Like sometimes I say I'm a software designer, sometimes I say I'm a product designer. Like just say whatever, have a great conversation, and then get back to making and solving hard problems. Like I just want to go make stuff with you guys, right? Like we can debate this all day long, but really, is that actually helping us at all? No.
I think the
just saying.
I think the thing that we don't concentrate on enough, especially in the careers of early designers, is how to work with other people. I think one of the big draws to becoming a designer or an engineer is you know that you can sit down and create something by yourself. Like you can create a website for the flower shop down the street by yourself. And like, wow, if I can do this by myself, imagine what else I can do by myself. Like I'm in control of my own destiny as a designer. Then you get out into the big world and you're working on a team of engineers and PMs and all sorts of other stakeholders, and all of a sudden you can't do anything by yourself anymore. And you're just like out in the water and you're treading water, you don't know how to swim. And it's kind of like almost like career culture shock in some ways. And so I think for these young designers, we concentrate on like improving their pixel skills and improving their like skills with Photoshop and technology, and we don't teach them how to actually work with other people. People in this industry like to call that soft skills. I don't want to call it soft skills. I hate when it's called soft skills. Well, it's called being a nice human being, is what it's called. And this isn't just a problem with young designers. It's a problem with like very experienced designers as well. Like you will meet very like thorny designers in the workplace. I can say that. He's a great friend of mine. Daniel's a great friend of mine, so I can call him thorny. No, but you can meet very opinionated designers in the workplace that like take a little bit of skill to kind of like work with. Massage. But once you learn how to do that, like once you learn how to work with Daniel, you will create the most amazing thing in the world.
No
or so I've been told.
I like how I don't have to change, they do.
Yeah. And so to me, social skills are something that we really need to like kind of concentrate on more in our young designers' careers and in our young PMs' careers, because it's not what we're doing right now is not good enough.
Yeah, and we need to celebrate those two things too.
Yeah.
In some ways, like I was like this when I was transitioning from being like kind of into being more a senior designer, all of a sudden I felt like I spent less time designing, right? And I was like, crap, I'm in meetings all the time. I'm trying to herd cats all the time. I'm, spending a lot of time with engineers. I only spend a third of my time actually in Sketch or Photoshop. It was Photoshop back then. And
So old.
we're all old. And
Still use Photoshop.
all right, maybe not James.
Yeah, Adobe.
But in a lot of ways, as you mature as a designer, you spend less and less time designing, and the bad designers get to a certain point and they'll ship a crappy product and they're like, I just couldn't get along with that engineer, and you're like, oh, you're a bad designer. Like that's bad design.
Right.
You're shipping a bad product because you didn't build that relationship 6 months ago and figure out how to explain something to people.
That relationship is a design problem that
Yes,
that you
that's
need to
what I'm
solve.
talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, with that thought right there, how can we look at every aspect of our life? This is a conference. People have spent 2 days. Some have traveled as far as Australia. The two Australians don't know each other. Isn't that weird? It's like 8,000 miles, same place in Salt Lake City. But how can we get better at...
It's a big country.
Yeah, I was like, what are you talking about?
It's a continent.
Why would they know each other? I'm confused. Explain yourself.
It's a continent.
I'm from Canada, and everyone's like, I've got a cousin in Vancouver. And I'm like,
I don't know your cousin.
all right.
And then the debate went down.
Anyway, go on.
Yeah.
I'm dead.
Okay.
These are soft skills.
Accurate.
How can we better elicit feedback? We talk a lot about, like, we show work early and often, all that stuff, but going to the fact of becoming a better human person, making a relationship 6 months ago, all of that stuff, so that we involve people in our work earlier and not be so hurt about stuff from the artist world, right? Like, I put art on the wall, it has no audience. I did it. People can like it or not. But I'm actually trying to solve something here, so shouldn't we be getting in as early as possible and getting kind of dumped on as fast as possible?
Yeah, I mean, I think one question you should always ask your partners if you've never worked with them before is, how are you motivated? What motivates you?
Yeah.
Because you'll be surprised. It's not always the same thing, right? Like, do you ever work on a team where, like, there's a PM who wants to ship whatever you just did way too early, and, like, the quality is not there, and it doesn't look good, and it barely works, but, like, it's the last day of the quarter, and, like, we're shipping it. Do you know why that happens? Not because the PM isn't smart. It's because the PM signed up the team to ship something this quarter, and, like, their promotion, raise, feedback, all that stuff is on the line if it doesn't ship. And so it's really helpful to know those things before the project starts. But if you don't ask, you'll never know, and you'll just assume everybody's motivated the same way you are. Conversely, I think a lot of engineers, PMs, other people in the company may mistakenly believe that designers are motivated by visible beauty in what they create. And, like, that's a part of it. But it shouldn't be the overriding factor in what we all do. And unless we actually have a chance to explain what our motivations are, and hopefully they're similar, they triangulate with what our partners' motivations are. But until you have that conversation, you can't know.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's worth taking the time to set up meetings, to set up meetings with people on your team to get to know them better. One thing that I do is anyone who's new on the team, or if there's someone new that I'm working with on a new project, I'll invite them out for tea or for lunch just to get to know them better, just to get to know them as a human being, which seems like, I know, like, a lot of young designers will be like, oh my God, like, I don't want to go to lunch with this person. That's not design, not sketch drawing. But the reason why you do that is because as you're building relationships and you get to know people, you understand how their styles work, who they are, how they think, how they function. A great example is right now at the Times, I'm building out a design system. And the amount of meetings I have had with so many people, I've met with people on other design teams, other engineers, people from different departments, mainly because I know that in order to build this project, I can't do it alone. And in order to build this project, I need to understand how these people function and what I might need to get out of them, and also what they can get out of me from it.
I don't know, we can either demand a seat at the table or we can earn it. And for me, earning it is being present as a creative problem solver inside an organization, which means that not all of your job is about the what, it's also about the how. So it is having those tough conversations around like, hey, what motivates you? Like, what are you being evaluated on? I'm being evaluated on this. It's thinking about how you can work as a team and clearing pathways to success, which isn't just about, you know, do you have the right plugins to Sketch to export things for your engineer, right? It's going much further than that. And true leaders in organizations where they have an explicit management or leadership title are those types of folks. They clear the path for themselves and others.
You mentioned, well, let me go back to another thought. There's this idea that, I'm just trying to formulate it right without being too political.
He's already cursed, it's okay.
Yeah, it's true.
Broke the seal.
It's all good.
I set the bar low. What do you got?
So, design is not art. It's kind of the thinking and the planning and the process that goes into how things look and feel and make, you know, people's lives different and all that stuff. But how do we get away from this idea that, I'm sorry, my train of thought is lost right now. So, well, let me just go back to my notes. I apologize. Yeah, so it's this idea of kind of understanding design's place in the world and doing really great work without bickering about it. Talking about the personal relationships, getting out of the 6-month prior type things. It's like the idea of experience designing your life, right? That the first way I start a project is I've got to understand who I'm working with. Like we always want to do these like user stories, and I am a user, so I need this, and therefore I will do this, and yada yada. It's like, well, what's your name? You know, and how are we going to do this together and be successful? There's a lot of people in the room that have done a lot of work, a lot of really solid work. Anything that you could add and maybe kind of get into the nitty-gritty with one another about getting out of their own way. And we talked earlier about the guys who are new and young. Now about the guys who are 15, 20 years into this and can't change.
I have a Post-it on my screen at home that says design or be designed. And so even though I've been through all of this and I'm a senior designer, sometimes I need reminders too, to actually step back, to think about how I can solve this, to actively go in as a problem solver to whatever that challenge may be, personal, professional. And so that Post-it saves me on a regular basis.
I think it's easy as you grow into a senior designer role for you, like any human being, to just think that, oh, well, I've been here for this long, so I know everything, when you really don't know everything. I've been doing this for 10 years, and I'm still learning something every single day. And so I think that, again, like I keep bringing it up, but I think ego is a really big part of it. Just being able to let go of that ego and being able to say, you know what, I don't know everything, and being able to ask questions as well. Don't be afraid to look stupid. I look stupid at work every single day, 24/7. Even when I'm not at work, I look stupid on purpose, because I'm learning, duh. So ask questions and don't be afraid. Don't think that you know everything, because you really don't.
And one of the nice things as you become more senior in your role is you get access to experts in other fields and experts across your own organization and elsewhere. And like, for me, this is like phenomenal. I get to work with like some of the best neurologists, some of the best oncologists, some of the best macroeconomists in the world. And like, I'm continuing to learn about design, but largely through their lens, you know, like what things are important to them, how do they make decisions, just all these other fields where people have figured out some things, and you realize like they have different techniques for, you know, the way an oncologist approaches patient care is very analogous to how we, you know, interact with users, and you can start drawing a lot of, you know, knowledge from those types of things. You can start talking with business leaders more about like, what are the pressures they're under all the time, like, you know, different sales techniques, different ways that, you know, reasons people raise money, and the ways that they structure their raises. All these things are fundamentally alter a business and then fundamentally alter the user experience. So the more time you can learn, you know, start learning these kind of broader, high-level skills, the more dangerous you become as a designer.
dangerous.
There's a concept in Eastern philosophy called shoshin. It means it translates to a beginner's mind, and many people probably heard about it, but it's been around for hundreds of years, I think. But the idea is, as you become more of an expert at something, you tend to lose your beginner's mind, and you don't approach problems with an open mind anymore because you're an expert. You go into a meeting and you say, well, I've seen this before, and this is how it's going to turn out, and that's why, and for that reason, we're going to go in this direction. And sometimes you're right, but it tends to close you off from some of the more interesting, solutions that may be out there that you're closing yourself off to because you've been in the industry for so long. And so, as designers, one of the nice things is we can always regain our beginner's mind by changing jobs. The moment I decided to leave Twitter was the moment I realized I had probably permanently lost my beginner's mind for working at Twitter. Because I was the guy in meetings who, when somebody came up with something they wanted to build, my mind immediately went to, oh, this is going to get to prototype stage, we're going to build half of it, and in 6 months, the director of product management is going to leave the company, and a new guy is going to come in, and it's going to get killed, and the team is going to leave. I would actually go through that entire chain of things that I had seen happen so many times before, and I just thought to myself, I'm the guy being the negative person in this room, when really, the idea itself is pretty reasonable, and we should probably try it.
You look so much more relaxed a year and a half later.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Do what he's doing.
So I mean, if you find yourself in a position where you've kind of grown into this very hardened role at your company and you're the expert, that's not necessarily a good thing. And it may be time to move on.
It means you're too comfortable.
Yeah, that too, for sure.
In the time we've got left, I'm sure each of you have had something kind of a pivot, if you will, in your own life that has made all the difference in your happiness, your success, and something. You just think through that, and maybe it's a mantra, maybe it's design will be designed, maybe it's something, maybe it was an experience with a leader, with a subordinate, with a coworker, whomever. Something that could be left of value to them that they might not hear any other way.
No pressure.
I'll give a mantra.
Okay.
My mantra is fear is excitement on pause. Even though we're designers and we're solving problems and they may seem somewhat mundane at times, there are certain times where you have to take actions where it feels a little bit scary because you're unsure of the unknown, even going back to this idea of being a senior designer and feeling like you know everything and being very comfortable. I feel like that ties into this inherent fear of not wanting to be wrong or not wanting to be called out or not having the right solution. And so the mantra of fear is excitement on pause is just for me personally to remind myself that even if I'm afraid of taking a step in a design solution at work or even in my life, maybe what I'm feeling is not fear, but just excitement that's meant to push me forward and to stretch me to be a better designer overall.
Daniel, you got one?
I guess when I think about this, it's a little more concrete than that, but when I think about this, I sometimes think there were a few pivotal moments in my career that kind of I feel were really fortunate that didn't feel very intentional at the time. I was running a small agency in Eastern Canada, living in pretty rural Canada out on the East Coast, and we sort of kind of lucked into working with Mozilla. One of our guys was one of my coworkers there was using Phoenix at the time. It was the browser. It was called Phoenix. It was later on became Firefox, and he wrote an open letter to Mozilla. And so we're a bunch of kids in Eastern Canada, right? And he writes an open letter on his blog because people blogged back then, and he said, I love this browser, but no one's ever going to use it if it doesn't look like professional software. And somebody from Mozilla was like, "You're totally right. You guys should fix it." I'm like, "Dang!"
Nice. Come on, man.
It's a good save. And we're like, wow, we just accidentally volunteered. And we looked at our schedule and we're like, we're not going to get paid for this. It's volunteer work, so it's an open source project. And I don't know if this will ever become something or be useful for us, but we're like you were saying earlier, we just wanted to make things. And there was an opportunity to work with a group in California, and it seemed really cool. And so we designed the I brought together a team of people, John Hicks and some other people, and we drew the Firefox logo and created that brand, and that led to designing Mozilla.org, which led to me moving to California, and these things there's a lot of happenstance early in your career, but some of it is about stepping out and taking a chance when it comes up in front of you, even if it's not kind of obvious where it will lead.
Spec work.
It wasn't spec work. It was honest. I mean, it was like, this is an open source project. If you want to do it as an open source contribution, that's great. There's a big, wide gap between that and spec work.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So it's a contentious subject, so.
I was trying to get it started. No, meaningful.
I think I kind of mentioned this earlier. One of the big moments for me was when I was being presented with these leadership opportunities, and I was like, oh my God, I don't want to be in meetings, I don't want to, whatever, all that stuff I'm never going to make again. And I reframed it as, I'm designing still, I'm just designing different things. I'm designing a team, I'm designing an organization, which is systems design. I'm designing my day, I'm designing an experience, I'm designing an environment where designers can thrive. And so suddenly I reframed all those things I had to do as design problems, and that was a fundamental shift for me. And so I think that's allowed me to tackle this in a different way with a more opportunistic kind of mindset, which I think as designers we're generally, you know, open-minded. Well, never mind. We're optimists for the most part. We think anything can be done. And so approaching management and leadership with that mindset was, it got me excited about it, where I wasn't before.
I think my pivot's happening right now, actually. Like, much like a lot of people in this room probably, when the election happened last year, a lot of things changed and a lot of things suddenly became non-important or less important than they once seemed, I think as designers, we're very good at rationalizing the social good that we do in our jobs. We can say to ourselves, well, I work at Twitter and I'm better informing the world. And that's how we rationalize, working at a company like that. But we conveniently forget that we're also creating echo chambers and we're also allowing speech to occur in the world which we'd rather not occur. Same thing with same thing with Facebook. Same thing with pretty much every other social network out there. It's not a Twitter thing. But a lot of after the election, I think I just kind of like sat up straight for the first time and said, the stuff that I've been doing in the past isn't important enough to justify me continuing to do it in the future. And therefore, I would say like I'm not really interested in working on projects that are designed to kind of keep people using them all day, every day. I think there's certainly benefit to those products, but I want to start helping out in the world in areas that have nothing to do with me, that are nothing like me. So a couple weeks ago, I went down to Haiti and helped break ground on a new school for kids. I actually picked up a pickaxe and like dug trenches for a new school that's being opened by Cliff Averill and a few other Seahawks. I helped introduce some families to their new homes that were built by this foundation. These homes are built for $6,500 a piece. They're 400 square foot concrete homes, $6,500 a piece, and 12 people will sleep gladly in a 400 square foot home in Haiti because you know where they're sleeping right now? Under a tarp. And so exposing yourself to situations like that, helping out in ways that don't benefit you personally at all, benefit people who are nothing like you, who have not been dealt your lot in life, I think has given me like a little bit more of a perspective for how I want to spend my next 10 years, my next 20 years. And so I'm still kind of in the middle of figuring that all out right now, but I would just say like as a group, like you're probably all better at taking vacations than me. I've never taken more than like 2 weeks off my whole life, but like plan a big one. If you can, like plan to take 6 months off, 12 months off at some point in your career, and do a little exploration because it's been really great for me, and I can't recommend it enough.
Thank you all so much. We're done.
All right.
That's great. Thank you.
Take a cue from the light that's faded away as it's hiding on the other side. This is what it's like. If you close your eyes, you just might.